No. We don't want the recording. Zoom recording. Oh, Dorothy is there. Oh, wow. Dorothy Gilliam.
Hi.
That's great. Hi, Dorothy.
Hi, how are you?
All right. We have a stellar group here. Leon Dash is here speaking of your post colleagues.
Oh
And
my
then
goodness,
James Williams, my old
wonderful.
buddy from the
Hi, Leon.
Foxtrot. Leon, are you there? Oh, he's away
Hey,
from the camera.
Dorothy, it's good to hear your voice.
Yeah, it's good to hear
Yeah.
yours as well.
Mhm.
Wonderful.
And Dorothy, I did hear from Don Scott. So
Uh-huh.
he plans to be here.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. He has a new podcast. I guess he'll mention that too. He's
Yeah,
retired brigadier general.
yeah. If he doesn't mention you should ask him about it.
Yes,
But I think he will. He's
yes.
working on it.
And the guy who's working with him is also going to be with him too, David Thompson. So if one doesn't
Wonderful.
mention it, the other will.
Mm-hmm.
Is that David Thompson who used to work for the Washington Post?
I don't know. I've never met this David Thompson.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know. All right. Cheryl Thompson's here. Good.
Maxine.
Okay.
Richard, when you get a chance, will you send me the password that ain't working for me?
What do you mean the password is not working for you?
I hit the password and the whole screen didn't. Let's see. Let me back
Okay,
up.
I'll send it again.
Thank you.
Yes. Oh,
Dick Prince, how are you?
Brian Garner's here. Good.
Dick Prince, how are you?
Oh, Ron, I hear your voice, but where are you?
I'm
He's
here.
on the top tier.
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
That's it.
Well,
He was just there.
that's what a
Oh,
lot
I
of
see you
people
now.
say.
Okay, good.
Okay. All right.
Or was that the AI version of you?
These things do happen, you know.
Right. Now, Ron, I was just telling about James. James worked at the Fox Trap also. That's where we met.
Really?
And Ron goes back to the Fox Trap also. We worked on the
Yes,
magazine.
indeed.
Okay,
Yes,
let me get
indeed.
these people here. Okay, let's see. Invite. There's more people here trying to get in. Okay, everybody. Okay, we got 16 folks. Okay, let me find this thing for Sharon. Did you finish telling the story, Jesse, about
Well, I've told it
World
as far as I would wish to go, as I say, mixed gender company, because some parts of it are not so proper.
II? Let's see.
They're only good at a bar.
Now, election day. We just talked about election.
Okay, Emil.
Hey, hi,
West
Richard.
Coast. West Coast is in the house.
Early in person.
Hi, Richard.
Clarence Page. Okay, come on in, Clarence.
But some of the stories applied to Saigon too, because I was there in the mid '60s, and the same kind of situation existed there as well.
Okay, let me see. I'm trying to find a way to get Sharon into the.
Hi, Richard. Oh, hi.
Yes.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Wait a minute. I can't see anybody now, though. I just switched screens. Hold on a second. Let me just get this other thing done. Okay. Oh, there's Maxine. Good. Thank you.
Continuing
I'm finding this thing to send.
It's only 3 p.m. Okay, Richmond did just send us their 3 p.m. number, so I will take it.
Thing over here, right?
No, that's okay.
Oh, good. There's Eric Slavin, Stars and Stripes.
Althea, all right.
Latrice.
The last one they're going to send. They're not going to send you at 5 p.m. 28-253. Okay. Wait.
Oh, Leslie Harris. Good.
I guess here, Michael, you can put it in Richmond City. to us. I just want to know what like VCU has to see whether this is a black split thing. Because I don't think it
Okay,
is.
Sharon, you should have that now.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Oh, Fairfax dropped. Fairfax County did drop at 5 p.m. 5 p.m. Okay, hold on. 5 p.m. number, let's see.
Oh, good. Ron is here.
You talking about Ron Nixon?
Let me get that in.
Yeah, Ron Nixon is here now. Good. He should be. I just saw his name pop up. I don't see him yet.
Is there a screen that is available on my device so I can see everybody? I mean, how can I see everybody?
You have to. Well, Jackie Green will tell you all that. He's the producer.
Okay.
Jackie, are you there? Well, basically, there's an arrow on the right side of the screen. You click that, and you can see the next row of people.
Okay. All right.
Blue on
Okay.
mine.
Yeah, Bedford, really good story of the day for the No campaign. I think they've had a good election day operation. They are going to win election day. I still think yes is favored. I would peg their odds at 80% chance of winning. Low end, 75.
Did you think to yourself,
Okay, sounds like everybody needs to mute themselves or something.
Coach photographed in a hotel.
Ron, we need to mute you. There you go. Thank you.
Everybody's talking about the Virginia election. That's what that's all about. If everybody knows about that, the gerrymandering. Oh, there's Roland Roebuck. Okay, good to see you again, my friend. Roland was with us on our discussion about Black and Latino relations about a year ago.
Yeah, that was very good, and I want to say that the voices of the anti-war veterans be included in this discussion. So I just want to make sure that not everybody here is pro-war.
Right?
All right?
Well, how can you be anti-war and still be in the military?
No, because if you're drafted, you don't have a choice. And if you're drafted from a colony of the United States where you cannot vote for the president, that is a thorn on your side. So your military participation is coerced and forced.
He's talking about Puerto Rico, by the way.
You can't.
That's
vote,
where I was drafted from.
You can't vote in presidential elections in Puerto Rico?
You cannot vote because it's a colony of the United States.
I didn't know that. You can't.
We're going to get started now. So we
They have
30
party delegates.
What's that?
They have a delegate to the Democratic Convention in the nomination process.
And they have a non-voting delegate probably also, just like the DC does.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody.
I'm on. Yes.
Okay. All right. We're gonna
Yes, I'm on it. Okay.
All right. Welcome to the Journalism's Roundtable.
Hi, Sylvia, I got it. Okay. Bye.
Okay. Mute yourselves, please. My name is Richard Prince, and I write an online column called Journal-isms. That's journal-isms, ISMS.com, on diversity issues in the news business. This roundtable is an extension of that. We started the roundtable in 1999 when a friend of ours was leaving to pursue a doctorate. She said, keep these going, and we have. We met every month in various restaurants in Washington, D.C. until the COVID pandemic, when we switched to Zoom. Our participation multiplied because we can get people who are not physically in Washington, D.C., and we hope to have more roundtables that are hybrid, that is, meeting in person, as well as having people attend via Zoom. That is, if people don't get too comfortable being on Zoom and don't mind stepping outside of the house and meeting other people.
Yeah.
All right, so we've had about 6 or 7 of these. The last one we had was with the National Conference at the headquarters of the National Conference of Negro Women, at the courtesy of the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies, and that was in December, and that's when we discussed the legacy of Jesse Jackson, with people who had covered his campaign. And hopefully that informed people. So when he passed a couple of months later, they had that as a frame of reference. So that was good. Anyway, we think of this as an online breakfast or luncheon or dinner party with the purpose to network and to learn. Some of the networking takes place in the chat room. So those on Zoom, please feel free to make use of it. A special welcome to those who are watching later on YouTube. Please leave messages in the comment section there as well. In fact, we already started the chat. We have a message from Tanya Gazdick, who is the president of JAWS, Journalism and Women's Symposium, who had a conflict that couldn't be with us. So I asked her to summarize what she wanted to say, and we could put it in the chat room. So there it is for everybody to see. Okay, all comments are on the record, and we ask everyone to be respectful of other people's time. So please try to be succinct and to the point. Okay, well, our subject tonight is race and the military. And this is a subject that we came to our attention, stayed to the forefront, because of the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, is declined to award one-star general status to women and black people, black military folks. And then he was quoted as saying, start meeting questions. Okay. He was quoted, Trump was quoted as saying he did not want to stand next to a black female general. And that was a story that was first reported by the New York Times. And then it prompted a discussion on MS Now with Chris Hayes and April Ryan, which the video of which is online in the Journal-isms column announcing this session. So, without further ado, I want to we want to go in sort of chronological order. The idea, as April said in that interview, is that black people in particular have been fighting for the United States and shedding blood for the United States in the military since the very beginning. So we want to go from the very beginning, the Revolutionary War, and we have with us Leslie M. Harris. Hi, Leslie, who graciously accepted my invitation to be with us. She wrote a piece that was the Boston Globe started this business of 250th anniversary before a lot of other people, given Boston status with the Boston Tea Party and all that. And so they've had a series, and Leslie was among the first to contribute, and she talked about the influence and participation of Black people and Native Americans in the Revolutionary War. So we want her to start. All these panels will have no more than 3 minutes. They've got to sum up how their field of expertise fits into the topic at hand of, what these people of color have done for the United States and the United States military. So Leslie, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. It's a thrill to be here. Richard got in touch with me when my piece appeared in the Boston Globe. It was a very brief piece based on the work largely of Benjamin Quarles, who wrote a book, The Negro and the American Revolution. And it was about the participation of Blacks in the Revolutionary War. But I want to go even earlier than that.
Oh, my goodness.
To the colonial era, to say we really have been here since the beginning, that enslaved Black people were also defended the various colonies. When they were enslaved, in New York, for example, then Dutch New Amsterdam and New Netherlands, they were enslaved by the colony and were to protect the colony. Similarly, in Lower Louisiana, if the French colonists were attacked by Native people, they were asked to defend that colony as well. And this is true with all of the colonies. So Black people have been involved in the defense of what became the United States. They also have fought against, of course, the United States, or what became the United States, in seeking their own freedom. So at times they joined with Native Americans during the colonial era, seeking freedom. You can think of some slave rebellions as military actions, which is very true in terms of the Stono Rebellion in South Carolina in 1739, when a group fled the colony trying to get to freedom in Spanish Florida. And then, of course, with the Revolutionary War, some fought for the patriot cause. Many fought against with the British. So I want to say the one general thing about Blacks in the military, which is that Black people have never been fully recognized and compensated for their contributions to this nation. And the recognition that they wanted was full citizenship, full payment for their services, and full freedom. And I am beyond distressed that we are back again with this nation claiming that our contributions to its protection via the military are irrelevant, are not to be recognized, and that Black people are to be ignored, disrespected, etc. And sadly, this continues a long history of Black people not being fully recognized for their contributions. So as much as I'm an historian, I'm also interested in how do we turn back this tide. Certainly recounting the history helps, but practical resistance is also an interest of mine. So thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for that. We want to fast forward to well, past the Civil War, past the War of 1812 and that era, and go right up to World War II. And I see Cheryl Thompson, Cheryl W. Thompson is here. Let me see if she's on my screen. Cheryl, oh, there you are. Good. Cheryl just wrote. She works for NPR, formerly at the Washington Post, and she teaches at GW, George Washington University, and she's just written a book about the Tuskegee Airmen, of which her dad was one. So, Cheryl, if you could tell us a little about what the United States owes the Tuskegee Airmen.
Thanks, Richard, for having me. I'm sorry, I'm
Oh, I
under
think
the
you need your volume.
Oh, you guys
Okay,
can.
that's better.
Okay. So thanks for having me. And, I think what the country owes these men were, first of all, this country did not want these men in planes in World War II. They did everything they could to try to keep them out. It was really the NAACP, it was the Black Pittsburgh Press, and the Urban League and others that pushed and pushed and pushed the military to have these guys to create this pilot training program. And even then, there were some who, didn't get in. And once they did get in, they were really trying to force them out by a lot of means, giving them bad planes in hopes that they would crash, sending them to, godforsaken places. And it was the resilience of these men who went over to Europe, these Black pilots who protected the white bomber pilots. That was their job, and they did it exceptionally well. And from the time they got to Tuskegee, got to Keesler in Mississippi before Tuskegee, they were treated badly. But they held on because they were there. They were patriots. They believed in this country. They wanted to fight for this country. They wanted to be pilots. And I don't know that they realized at the time the significance of becoming the country's first Black military pilots, but they were. And they fought and fought and fought. And, they were kicked down, they were kicked, they would get right back up and continue fighting. And they are the reason that they are certainly a big reason that this country won that war. Because they were not, you tell them no, they didn't understand no. And even during the war, when they were over in Europe, and they were treated better than the locals, actually, than they were by their own country. But when they came back, none of them could get a job flying for a commercial airline. Even though they had hours upon hours of flying time, and they still sucked it up and they got respectable jobs, and some of them went and finished college, and they did quite well for themselves. But so this country, and it wasn't until 2007 when George W. Bush gave them the Congressional Medal. It took how many years? Do the math, because I'm a journalist, I'm not good at math. So from the end of the war in 45 until 2007, that's how long it took for them to be really nationally recognized and honored. And by then, so many of them were gone.
Okay, thank you. We're going to take questions at the
Richard,
strategic.
can I
Go
ping
ahead, go
on
ahead,
Cheryl?
Steve. Yes.
Cheryl's book is excellent, by the way.
Thank you, Stephen. Your check's in the mail.
and it really brings to light the contributions of the Tuskegee Airmen. It's not a complaint about the book, but it's a complaint about how people view Blacks' contribution in World War II. Many people know of Tuskegee Airmen, and rightly so. I don't think that as many people know about all the other Black units that fought with distinction in the war. The 761st Tank Battalion, the 333rd Field Artillery Battalion, which protected the American troops that were retreating during the opening stages of the Battle of the Bulge. And later, and paid a really hard, stiff price for it. And later were formed into another unit, the 969th Field Artillery Battalion, which protected the 101st Airborne, which got a lot of recognition for holding out against the Germans at Bastogne. But they wouldn't have been able to do that if they hadn't had this artillery shield that was in part provided by Black artillerymen. And so one of the reasons I wrote my book, Black Messiah, is to talk about some of these units that have not been given their due. And I think we were starting to see a little bit of recognition of the units that go beyond the Tuskegee Airmen. Again, I think that the Tuskegee Airmen should be getting all the accolades that they deserve. But I just feel that the aperture should be widened and taken to some of these other units, like the 92nd Infantry Battalion, which served with distinction in Italy, and which was the basis of James McBride's novel, The Miracle at St. Anna, which Spike Lee made a movie out of.
Oh, yes.
There's a number of these units that really deserve a lot of recognition, and hopefully they'll get it.
Very good, very good. Thanks, Steve, for that. Emil Guillermo is here as well, and I asked Emil to join the conversation because the contributions of Asian Americans to our military over the years haven't gotten sufficient attention. And as he was nodding his head there, so I want Emil to talk a little bit about that. And most of what you've written about has been about World War II and afterwards.
And actually, it's become really the focal point for Asian American and specifically Filipino American interests to recognize, the contributions and how the United States treated these people after the contributions. So, but you skipped over World War I, and I've been doing research on a fellow named James Robert Amok, who came from the Philippines as part of a group that performed in what were known as the human zoos of the Chicago World's Fair in 1905. And it was the biggest exposition at the time. They were so proficient that they started these touring groups of Filipino dancers and Filipino life. And this was a time when America was trying to sell the imperial vision of McKinley in the Philippines. And they got to New York and they performed in Brooklyn, and one of their star, James Robert Amok, he was drafted. And this is a guy who was from the jungles in the Philippines, and then got into this weird Filipino minstrel show that was promoted by white promoters. He actually fought, or he lost his battle against the draft board in Washington, and you could look it up. It's documented in the Washington Post. And he fought in World War I. So Filipinos were fighting in World War I, and he won the Croix de Guerre, the War Cross. Anyway, I wanted, you skipped World War I.
I didn't know we had an expert. You were an expert in World War I.
Well, just because of James Robert Amok,
okay,
who was anyway. World War II, everything changed with World War II in Pearl Harbor. The Japanese Americans, if you weren't incarcerated, the military was seen as redemption. So we can't forget the 442nd Regimental Combat Team. They proved Japanese Americans fighting in Europe while their families were incarcerated at home. They became one of the most decorated units in U.S. history. That's just one. Remember, at the time in the 40s, in World War II, there was no real Asian America. There were Asians who were screwed over to different degrees by the mainstream. We didn't really become an Asian American until after the racist quotas were lifted with the 1965 Immigration Act. So when the Japanese served in the 442nd because of Pearl Harbor, the Filipinos, a lot of the Filipinos and the Chinese, they would wear buttons to join in the chorus of "I am not a Jap." There was dissension in the group of Asians in America. They saw that the Japanese were falling, and so the Filipinos and Chinese were rising up to take over. That was what was happening because of Pearl Harbor. But the second thing about Pearl Harbor, the next bombing after Pearl Harbor was Manila. And that caused a reaction among the 30,000 Filipinos who were here in America at the time. They were all, because they were American nationals, they were colonized, and they could not serve. So they said, well, we want to serve. We want to prove that we are American. 20,000 Filipinos enlisted only because FDR allowed an exception for them to enlist as non-citizens. And they formed the 1st and 2nd Filipino Infantry Regiment and the 2nd Filipino Infantry Regiment. And they brought their love of their knowledge of language and the terrain to help fight in the Philippines. But it was funny because if you were here in America as a Filipino and you happened to be able to start a family by virtue of birthright citizenship and the 14th Amendment, you became a citizen. So some of them were citizens. Meanwhile, the United States needed help in the Philippines, and FDR went to the Philippines and said, if you are in the Philippines and want to serve aside American forces, this is where Little Brown Brother came up, right? You can join and we will give you citizenship. And that was how the USAFFE, the U.S. Armed Forces in the Far East, was formed. It incorporated the Filipino Scouts. It incorporated guerrilla units. And I had the pleasure of interviewing a number of Philippine guerrillas who fought against the Japanese in their islands within the Philippines. They would climb up in the mountains. They would describe how they had slingshots and they were barefoot and they were like teenagers fighting. And this was the part of the USAFFE. They also had regular soldiers, but this is these are Filipinos in America. Now I'll cut it short in a sense because what happened to these folks is that they were promised citizenship, but in 1946 the Rescission Act was passed, and this is Truman, which agreed to cut off the Filipinos, and this made this issue of equity pay for Filipinos a key issue starting around 2000 to get equity pay for the Filipinos. And so they initially wanted to fight to show their allegiance to America, their love for freedom in the Philippines. You had Filipinos here in America to show that they belonged. They were non-citizens and they fought in that 1st and 2nd Regiment. And then in 1946, the citizenship of Filipinos in the Philippines was taken away with the Rescission Act. So
what was the Rescission Act? The
Rescission Act in 46 is when Truman essentially said those promises that FDR made, we're casting them out. Now, there's some politics involved. There was some money savings involved. But since 46, Filipinos were trying to be made whole, and it became more of a community issue later on in the post 70s and 80s. And it wasn't until Obama in 2009 that they were able to get a provision in an omnibus bill to grant Filipino veterans of World War II in the Philippines $9,000 and Filipino veterans in America $15,000. And that was to make up for the fact that they had been granted nothing since the end of the war to 2009. Clearly, it was something, but not enough. But it shows the kind of betrayal that has taken place since 2000. I think it was 15 or 16. When I wrote for NBC News and their Asian American channel, I wrote about the struggle of the Filipino veterans trying to be made whole. It really became the singular issue that united the Filipino community, and then just to shorten this up again, Filipinos have risen up in the army since then. You all remember Major Antonio Taguba, who led the Abu Ghraib investigation. I actually have one of my cousins is married to another general, Filipino American.
Wait a minute. Not everybody remembers that. The
Abu Ghraib
administration.
Oh, Abu Ghraib. Well, crimes in Iraq. These. The torture involved toward prisoners there in Iraq that were carried out by American soldiers, and Taguba was picked as someone to come in and investigate. He told the truth. His career was never quite the same after telling the truth, but to Taguba's credit, after he got in the news for speaking out and making public the crimes of Abu Ghraib, Taguba led the movement to coalesce all the Filipinos who fought, the Filipinos in the Philippines and the Filipinos here, to give them a congressional gold medal. I believe that was in 2015 or 2016, but that's one of the lasting memories, or one of the great moments for Antonio Taguba after he exposed what happened at Abu Ghraib. So,
Emil, did you say that the Filipinos got 9,000 and 15,000 in reparations?
Not reparations, but back pay, essentially back pay.
What did the Tuskegee Airmen get?
I don't know how much they got, and the division was
zero.
Well,
okay.
I'm not sure what they got, but look,
Treated badly.
Yeah,
That's what they got.
All right. Well, look, most of them only got that 15,000 if you're in America and 9,000 if you're in the Philippines. They only got that because Obama was able to get that in that omnibus bill, and look how long they had to fight for that. They only got it because all of them, more Filipino veterans were dying than the rate of their deaths was higher than normal, and so they figured they'd just pay them off. So that was really the focus of Filipino American and Asian American politics, the equity pay for Filipinos. From 2015 to, they're still fighting. Some are still fighting for medical payments and all that. So anyway, the military for Filipinos and Asian Americans always seen as a way to prove our redemption, always a way to prove our Americanness, and with mixed results.
All right, thank you.
Hey,
Before we move
Richard,
on to, yeah,
Richard, this is Glenn Proctor.
Yes.
I saw Bobby
see you, Glenn.
posted in the chat about Montford Point Marines, and that's another group that distinguished themselves during World War II. In 1942, 20,000 Black men became the first Black Marines at Montford Point Camp in Jacksonville, and 900 of them fought in the Battle of Iwo Jima, which all you Washingtonians know. There's a big Marine Corps statue at the Iwo Jima Memorial. But they too received from Obama the Congressional Gold Medal in 2013. So like Stephen said, like Emil said, like Cheryl said, that's another group that distinguished themselves.
Next door.
Even when they weren't wanted, but and they were mostly in infantry units that really didn't want them, but of course they distinguished themselves. And I just want to point that out. I'm a proud member of one of the legacy chapters here in Charlotte.
If I may add, the Asian Americans are such a diverse group. I mentioned the Japanese, I mentioned the Filipinos. I know a little more about the Filipinos because the reporting I've done, but there are also the Chinese Americans who won a congressional gold medal. Many of them who flew for the Flying Tigers, and they worked in a foreign theater during World War II. Also, there were military intelligence service agents, Japanese Americans who served as linguists, who also fought and were recognized. So, broad base of Asian Americans or Asians in America. Like I said, they all had varying degrees, varying status as to who was an American. But you know, the Congressional Gold Medal was something when they all received it in later years.
Can I add something to this to kind of piggyback on what you're talking about in terms of the Filipino relationship and the African American relationship? There's a special relationship between the Buffalo Soldiers or
Oh yeah.
During the Spanish American Filipino Cuban conflict. You had roughly 15% of the African Americans who served in the Philippines remained in the Philippines, actually, and had children. And unfortunately, during World War II, when they were interned by the Japanese, a good portion of those veterans who remained in the Philippines actually died as Japanese prisoners of war. You have, for example, the Walter Loving, who of course was the man who laid the foundation for the later, I think, COINTELPRO program, but he was the African American counterintelligence person during World War I. And he famously wrote and organized the Filipino Constabulary Band, but also he was invited and a special guest of the president Quezon, and he died, of course, in 1944 during the battle, 1945, with the Battle of Manila. But the other thing I wanted to add in terms of congressional gold medals, there were two given recently. One to the 6888, the Black Wax, who served the only Black women auxiliary unit for the Army that served overseas, and the 369th Harlem Hellfighters both got the congressional gold medals in the last
Okay,
couple
I'm
of years.
back again. Somehow the
There you
Zoom
go.
cut off.
Oh, it did?
Yeah, right. Anyway, go. Who was
I'm done.
speaking?
I don't know
Hey,
what happened.
can I add something about David Fagan because he's a Filipino American hero, right?
Yeah.
From Tampa, was a Buffalo Soldier, ended up in the Philippines, heard the N-word and thought it was about him, but it was the Americans talking about the Filipinos, and he deserted and actually joined the Philippine Army and was a leader in the U.S. The U.S. Philippine War, one of the least memorized wars, where the U.S. went against a sovereign nation, the Philippines, the first democracy in Asia, 1899 to 1902.
Okay,
Yeah.
Latrice wanted to say something.
Oh yeah, no, I was just gonna say, yeah, I mean, David
Oh, well,
Fagan.
first of all, let's identify you before you.
Oh yeah, I'm Latrice Donaldson. Hi, I'm a professor at Auburn University, and I'm the founder and president of the Society for Black Military Studies. And I also have a book series with the University of Virginia Press, the Black Soldier War Society, New Narratives and Critical Perspectives. So if there's some people who have some stories you want to write, submit to my book series. We're accepting proposals anyway. But what I was going to say was, David Fagan's legacy actually was very complicated, the relationship for African Americans in the military, because his defection laid a trend in which white officers mistrusted African American soldiers. And Fagan was very unpopular amongst Black soldiers themselves, i.e., there were more whites who defected to the Philippine cause than there were Black soldiers. But David Fagan's defection caused problems for other people like Thomas Calloway, who was unjustly persecuted, other Black non-commissioned officers who they found suspicious because of their close relationship, right, with the Filipino population. White soldiers complained to Taft, which I thought was funny because Filipino women preferred Black men. Black soldiers. And they actually wrote to Taft, is in like official documents and everything about, the Filipino women won't talk to us. They only want to talk to the Black men. And can y'all do something about that? Anyway, if y'all want to talk about World War II, we can shift gears here to talk about, I think another figure that's greatly underappreciated and under-researched is Mary McLeod Bethune and her work in terms of her advocacy, not only for Black women, but also Black men in their service. She was a special assistant to the Secretary of War, Henry Stimson. And she actively, she wore her uniform and actively participated and fought to get women, the Black Rosies, i.e. 600,000 Black women serving in the civilian defense industry, but also getting women to fight and serve in the different military branches. So I think, a big part of this conversation around Black military service can go back to something David Walker said in David Walker's Appeal when he made the statement that this country is more ours than theirs. And if you operate from that kind of perspective in terms of who is the true, actively participating and living out the true legacy of America's, vision, you could tie it to or make the argument that it's when African Americans serve in the military that they're holding that mirror up to the U.S. And so,
is that what David Walker meant by that statement?
Well, I think he probably what he meant was, this country actually is more ours than theirs because we built it. That's, I think, what he was what he was arguing.
I heard that.
Richard.
Yes.
Richard, I have this is Roland Roebuck. I'm a Air Force veteran, servant, Da Nang, etc. Extremely anti-war. I want to get from our experts some view related to how Native Americans view the presence and, I would say, military involvement with Native Americans, Buffalo soldiers, and they relate the view of Native Americans towards these soldiers. And you can answer that later on. Okay?
Well, you know this. I mean, part of the answer to that, the so-called Navajo Code, Windtalkers. You know that story?
No, I don't know the story.
The code people, Navajo Code.
Yeah. Separate. And others.
Talkers.
I mean,
oh yeah, I know about the talkers. Yes.
Okay, but the Navajo was only one of them. There were other Native Americans that used their own language. And they used them to call in coordinates, and that the Germans couldn't understand it. I mean, they never even heard of it. They couldn't even put up a structure of the language.
But my point is that our Black soldiers committed atrocities against Native Americans, and I'm trying to get some feeling with respect to how that is viewed within this whole Native American and Black relationship.
Well, we tried to get somebody from the Native American community to join this, but they have been. I'll put a link in the chat room about a Native American perspective on some of this. But go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
I'll throw something out there in terms of the conversation about atrocities. So, to be fair, you have a situation in which it's a very nuanced or complicated relationship between indigenous groups in the West and the Buffalo Soldiers units. You have a situation in which you have for example, the the Black Seminole Scouts who actively served and participated, with working
the cavalry.
Working with the cavalry, but also as working as scouts, going in terms of with Black and white units. But you also have the situation in which African Americans were owned by indigenous people. You have the quote unquote 5 civilized tribes who actively participated in slavery, who had to make a decision as to whether or not they would allow them to be a part of the, roles. And of course, you have the situation where they actually try to expel Black people, later on in the 20th, 21st century. So you have this complicated relationship in which African Americans, some of them who served in the West, in particular the former Civil War veterans, you remember indigenous people fought with the Confederacy. Some of these indigenous groups served and fought for and continue to fight after the quote unquote Civil War ended for the Confederacy. And so you have a situation in which are Black people really feeling that sympathetic to indigenous groups if this is the same group of people who, in their eyes, some of these Civil War veterans were owned by indigenous groups. You do have a situation in which there were only 4 regiments. There were only 4 Black regiments, the 24th, the 25th, the 9th, and the 10th. There's only 25,000 Black regular troops.
The 47th. There was also the 47th Pennsylvania Black Regiment, which was formed in 1863. Because my great
but that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about who served out west, the 4 regular Black regiments. I'm not talking about the Civil War.
Oh, okay.
The 43rd didn't serve out west. The only Black regiments that served in the West were the 9th, the 10th, the 24th, and the 25th. The 38th, the 39th, the 40th, and the 42nd were all condensed into the infantry groups. So there were only 25,000 25,000 regular troops. The amount of atrocities the Buffalo Soldiers participated in, more so they were people who served on the reservations and did a lot of they fought in like, say, for example, the Victoria campaign, where they were actually in the Indigenous War. But I have not, in my research, come across any sort of massacre that the Buffalo Soldiers participated in. Not any troop that I've come across. Now, I don't know the whole breadth of all companies, but this is something that I spent a lot of time researching, and they did not do the massacres, say like the militias did during the massacres, so the Shivington massacre, etc. I will say that they did get into a lot of skirmishes with whites. They did get into a lot of back and forth killings with white settlers and cowboys, and ended up serving as, protecting the Indian reservations. So you do have those conversations happening.
Yeah, but don't you think that the experience was somewhat different in the West as opposed to, say, in Virginia, North Carolina, with the Pamunkeys and the Lumbee Indians?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, but very different.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That animosity between Blacks and Pamunkeys and Lumbee, for example.
What was that all about? For those who don't know, what was that about?
Well, the Pamunkeys are an Indian nation or a tribe in near Richmond in Virginia, and then the Lumbees are North Carolina, Lumberton, Lumbee River. But the relationship between African Americans and the Indians of those groups was, cozy, intermarriage. I mean, so it's not. There might have been some, but anyway, I mean, they're all mixed in together.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have the Iroquois Confederation and some of the I forgot that group in North Carolina that actually, you had the Cherokee that would, serve as slave catchers, and then you had another group that actually went and liberated Black people from the reservations and lived in the swamps and stuff like that, right? So you have different indigenous groups and their relationship with chattel slavery, where some went and helped free Black people from the reservations, while some went and catched and returned Black people to the reservations.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Moving chronologically. Actually, I do want to. I wanted to acknowledge Eric Slavin's presence here. He's the editor of Stars and Stripes, and this whole conversation did start because of actions of the pen has done, is they've tried to control Stars and Stripes more than they should. So I wanted to ask Eric, before we move on to Vietnam, what the status of all that is. What are they trying to do to Stars and Stripes, and how have you responded?
Sure, Richard. Well, This largely began on January the 15th when a tweet was posted by the DoD spokesperson talking about ridding Stars and Stripes of, quote, woke distractions and making it more about all things military and getting rid also of DC gossip columns. To my knowledge, I don't think we've ever run a DC gossip column. I'm not sure what those woke distractions were because they never contacted us prior to putting that tweet out and did not contact us for several months afterward regarding that. So there was a leak to the Daily Wire, which had some more information in there talking about potentially getting rid of our print edition, replacing our civilian reporters, a number of other things that, again, the Pentagon did not discuss with us. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Stars and Stripes, but we do operate on First Amendment principles, which makes us fairly unique given that we are within the Department of Defense, but it's something we take very seriously and always have. So we are very careful about protecting that independence. And then on March 9th, a new memo came out as we were working on Iran war coverage. We had a reporter, an African-American reporter, I might add, in Bahrain, who had missiles going on around her apartment at the time and continued
What's
to
her name,
report.
by the way?
Shannon Renfro is her name. Yeah. In the middle of all this, a memo comes out with further information in it saying that, yes, Stars and Stripes will remain independent, but you are hereby restricted from running wire service content from anything that you contract for, including the AP and the Washington Post. You are restricted from running comics in your print edition. Why comics? We do not know. Other than that, it is something that comes from syndicated content. And you're restricted from running what is called controlled unclassified information. Now, we are probably as careful as any news organization about not putting service members at risk because they're our readers. We don't want to get them killed. But controlled unclassified information, there's about 135 approximately different examples of what that could be. And I have seen that used for a speech on the retirement of horses at an Army base. So it is vastly overused and could potentially cause some issues. So at this point, we are dealing with it as best as we can. We are continuing in our staff coverage to be as accurate and balanced and fair as we always have, and to call power to account when necessary. But this is certainly something that we are having to deal with that was not expected, to say the least.
Well, is there anything the public can do to support you or fellow journalists?
Well, we have seen some letters written from Congress now. There was a couple of weeks ago, we saw something from 6 senators, 39 people from the House of Representatives who also written letters asking the Department of Defense questions about what their intentions are regarding Stars and Stripes. And certainly there is that route. A number of journalists, including one who's on this call, have written about us as well, and we appreciate that. And,
Clarence.
Hi, Clarence. Good to see you.
I consider myself to be a Stars and Stripes veteran since I was a 71Q military journalist, MOS.
Okay.
And when I was stationed in Germany, I did a couple of press releases that Stars and Stripes ran, so I put that on my resume.
No,
proudly.
awesome. Where were you in Germany?
Oh, I was on a reforger mission, returning forces, to training with NATO allies and all during the summer of 1970, and it was as close as I got to actual combat.
Nice. Yeah, I moved from Germany last year. Actually, I was the Europe and Middle East bureau chief. So,
all right. Well, thank
you. You're a little closer to combat than me.
I was in Iraq from 2005 to 2011 as well, on and off on assignment. So yeah, I did a little bit of that stuff too. But never with a guy. I was just shooting a camera at people. That's all I did.
That's all I did.
Yeah.
Did we lose Richard
Go ahead,
again?
people.
Richard, you off.
Can't hear me? Rats.
I hear Richard now.
I heard rats.
Okay, you hear me now, right?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I hear you
Good.
now.
All right, moving right along. After World War II came Korea. So we can try, anyone who wants to chime in on Korea can do so a little later. But we want to move right now, right straight to Vietnam. And we're very fortunate to have Jason Harper here and Jesse Lewis, both of them. And Jason directed a film about your 3 minutes before we take questions.
We missed some of the sound there, Richard.
Okay, can you hear me?
Well, now, could you just repeat what you said the last two or three
Okay,
seconds?
I said I wanted to call on Jason Harper to talk about his film on black soldiers in Vietnam.
Sure. Thank you,
and
Richard.
what we should take away from that, here as we are sitting here in 2026.
Sure, and I'll do this in tandem with Jesse Lewis, who was there reporting in the late 1960s. So I just completed a documentary that I directed. My name is J.M. Harper, about a group called Long Range Patrol, or Long Range Reconnaissance Patrol, LRRP. They were called LRPs. There's a book called Soul Patrol written by a veteran by the name of Ed Emanuel, and he was there doing his tour from June 1968 to 69 when he was 19 years old. And he wrote about that year where he was part of the first Black Special Operations team in Vietnam. And it's a tale of what those men did, those young men did, going out on 5 or 6 man teams into the jungle for 5 or 6 days at a time. And the battle that they fought on 2 fronts, both there in Vietnam and then, of course, also at home in the late 60s. It's also a film about the 50 years after the war and how they reckoned with what they did there, and how many of them remain in Vietnam in many ways, in their heads, and the psychology of that. And so the film premiered at Sundance in January and is now on its festival run and will premiere theatrically at the end of the year. And I highly recommend picking up Ed's book. But Jesse, maybe you want to speak towards what you were doing there for the Post as well in '67, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I got to Vietnam for the Post in December '66 and came back in mid-late April '67. And while I was there, I mean, I had 2 assignments. One was to back up Ward Just, who was the bureau chief, but I collected information for 4.5 months on the role of the Black GI in Vietnam. And as an aside, I was virtually ignored by the all-white press corps. They asked me, "What are you doing talking to black people, black soldiers all the time?" I said, "I just feel more comfortable." But the irony is that when my series was published, all of them came running to me and asked for my carbon paper, my copies, which in the old days were called blacks. And it wasn't anything to do with race. It's just that was the color of the carbon paper, and they wanted to see what I'd written. But of course, there's no way. Even if I told them no, and sometimes I used 1 or 2 words that I don't want to use on the Zoom. I annotated the no, sometimes very strongly. But there was no way they were going to take. I wouldn't dare share them with them, not at all. In any case, the series won. I won a couple of prizes at Spring, and everybody else duplicated it. Time magazine sent Wally Terry out. New York Times sent Tom Johnson out, and other American news organizations sent people out to do the same thing. And they added a little bit to it. They improved upon my story. The brothers that they sent out there, I helped. Gave them. They contacted me. I gave them suggestions on how they could approach it, and indeed improve upon my project. But none of them had the length of time. I mean, 5 months I was with these brothers in all 4 services: Air Force, Army, Marines and Navy. I flew in the back seat of a Phantom F-4 pilot, Phantom F-4 fighter with a black pilot from Baltimore. Actually, it turned out I went to camp with him as a kid. He's gone. Tim Body. He retired as a major general. He headed, for example, NASA's transportation group, and you've seen the photograph of the what is it, the 747 that carries the space shuttle on the roof, on the top.
Yeah.
That was Tim's job, to make sure that not only the space shuttle, but the pilots, the astronauts, got to where they needed to be for takeoff and bring them home after recovery. So it was an exciting time, but nobody even bothered to do a story on the black GIs. Nothing at all. Time magazine did a story on the first and the only parachute combat parachute drop in Vietnam, and they took a photograph in the plane, in the body of the plane, looking down, and it must have been 20 soldiers waiting to jump. None of the people were black, but I visited the group. Well, after the jump, I guess half of the troops were black. I just couldn't understand that. By the way, the Post, I put that in my series, but the Post didn't print that observation.
Interesting.
Anyway, yeah.
Okay, anybody?
But
Okay.
I just might make a to end rather, by saying Jason's film really put the spotlight on that little known episode in American military history.
Richard, I have a question. This is Roland Roebuck.
Yes.
Yeah, I serve in with the Air Force in Da Nang in 1972. And to the reporters, I asked the following question. The voices of veterans that are anti-war, do you reporters have a responsibility to also share those concerns with the general public? Because we assume that all of us were pro-war. We were
But
not.
but you say pro-war. If you're a soldier being shot at, you sure you're a little before the war. I mean, you can't look at. I mean, I think that's you're putting it. I would not. That's just the wrong question to ask, or is this not the way to pose it? If you're under fire or you're shooting at people to save your life, it's not a matter of being pro-war or against the war.
I am saying. Then let's change the time. After you leave your military duty, do you feel compelled to express your disdain for your service, or you still aloof?
Well, it's not a matter of being aloof or expressing disdain. I mean, what does a mortician feel about embalming a dead body? I mean, it's not a matter of emotion. It's a job. There's a lot of people who don't want to do that, and some people who don't do that. Some people don't even go to funerals. They'll only go if there's a closed coffin. So it's not a matter of being pro or against.
I take a different view. And I will tell you that back in 1985, Veterans for Peace had a delegation that went to the Soviet Union, to Moscow, and we met with the Viet Cong to discuss issues related to peace. Okay?
When was this again?
In what year?
1985.
Yeah. Well, John McCain went back. John McCain, who was a prisoner of war, went back to North Vietnam.
I saw his uniform. I saw his uniform in Hanoi. I've been to Vietnam 3 times, and it really saddens me the impact that war has upon populations. I do not worship it, and I feel the pain that we enact when we declare war, primarily on brown people.
All right.
That's my position.
Okay. All right.
Richard.
Yes. Who's speaking?
Yeah, this is Glenn.
Oh, Glenn, yes.
Can I ask how many on the call served in Vietnam?
Well, you can put your hands up.
Don't ask just serve. Been there. I was there, and I've been back since the war. I don't think there's anybody on the call. I don't think there's anybody on the call who served in Vietnam. That's a very long time ago.
Yeah, I did.
I served, and I've been there 3 times.
Okay.
During the war, you served?
No, I may be one of the oldest people on this call. I was in Nam in 65.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay.
Okay. All right. All right. I want to ask about the other veterans. Sharon Flanagan is here, and she co-founded a group of, well, Sharon, let me call you on the screen. Oh, yeah. Tell us about the group you formed and why you formed it.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Sharon Flanagan. I'm news editor at the Philadelphia Tribune and a proud Marine Corps veteran. And we, as journalists, there was a fellowship that was done by, I believe, by Poynter Institute right after 9/11. So it brought together a lot of journalists who had military background and or covered the military. So at the end of that fellowship, we formed military reporters and editors. And so we're called MREs. So that was founded probably, I'll say everything got legal as a nonprofit by 2013.
And what was the purpose?
And the purpose was to help support journalists who were covering the military. So all its facets on every level. So, and I had no idea that this was such a big field in journalism until I took that fellowship. I had no idea, but I'd always had an interest because when I was an editor at USA Today during that time, I was considered the military expert. So I do all the graphics we called it the mother of all graphics because it was a full page graphic that covered the war, the Gulf War. And it was just amazing how many things civilians don't know about the military. So it was a great time for me to be able to step up and use my background as a Marine and use my background as an editor.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, that's a good segue for Ron Nixon, who is on the board of military veterans in journalism, and also can give us a nice overview of what the Marines were doing all this time as we went from the Revolutionary War to Vietnam. So, Ron, what do you say?
Good afternoon. I'm sorry. Good evening, everybody. Good to see you all, and good to hear the conversation about the military and the process where we are today. My background, I was in the U.S. Marine Corps from 1988 to 1992, fought in the first Gulf War, served in the infantry, but also Marine security forces. And I have covered the military in one form or another, either as a reporter, as an editor. I was most recently at the Associated Press, where I was a VP, and also wrote the military section for the AP style book, or co-wrote the. In terms of your question, Richard, so the Marine Corps, and for my fellow Marines on here, URA, and nice to see you on. But the Marine Corps was founded in 1776, and actually there were Blacks in the Corps in small numbers back then, up until 1796, when the Secretary of War, which actually was a title back then, there actually was a Secretary of War. Secretary of War McHenry deemed that no Negroes, natives, or something else he said would not be in the Marine Corps. And that pretty much lasted until 42, when the Marine Corps actually did start letting Blacks join. It was the last of the major services to actually fully integrate. But as the gentleman said before, talked about the Montford Point Marines, the Marines train at two places. One, if you're on the eastern side of the Mississippi, you train at Parris Island. If you're on the western side of the Mississippi, you train in San Diego. For those of us who went to Parris Island, we call those folks Hollywood Marines. And so the Corps really slow walked integrating Blacks into the service. This Corps is steeped in tradition, even more so than the other services. It is a very conservative branch, even more so than the others. And by sort of fulfilling the role to integrate by letting Marines, Black Marines train at Mumford Point, but still segregated from the Marines who train at Parris Island or San Diego. It as a former Marine or a Marine Corps veteran, both are acceptable. To someone's point earlier about your feelings about the Corps, I have a complicated view of the Corps. I don't think I would be the person that I am today if I had not gone into the Marine Corps. By the same token, I also understand the history of the Corps and what transpired before me, and even during the time that I was in, and even transpires now. I edited a series when I was at the Associated Press called "Racism in the Ranks," about racism in the military. And a lot of the things that are heard people who were in before me, and some of the things that I experienced are some of the things that are still going on in the services now.
Like what?
So,
like what?
well, the military is a microcosm of society as a whole. When you come into the military, you come in from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, or the Bronx, New York. You bring all of those things with you. So it's not that it is colorblind. You are forced to work with people, not because you necessarily like them, but your life depends on them. But same racism that exists outside of the military and the Marine Corps in society exists within the Marine Corps. You still have incidents where people make racist statements. There have been symbols like Confederate flags and things like that found on in the bases. There are a number of people who were found to be in some of these right-wing groups like Oath Keepers and Proud Boys that are in the military. So again, the same things that exist outside the military exist within it. For some of those groups, it is it's strategic. They want to go into the military to actually learn those skills, to be able to use them once they get out. And so, yeah, all the issues that exist outside of society exist within it. The only thing is that you are forced to work with people that you may not necessarily like, but again, at the end of the day, you have to depend on them. As I said, I fought in the first Gulf War, and there was a ton of people that I did not like, but I had no choice but to depend on them, and they had to depend on me because that's the way we come home. Without that kind of then you die because there's nobody to watch your back and you're not watching theirs. But at the end of the day, you are who you are. I'm the person that I went in with. I will say though that the military broadly does enhance your worldview. You get to meet people that you probably never would have met before. You get to learn about different things because you're stationed in different places. My first duty station was Sigonella, Italy. I was stationed in Norfolk, Virginia, Camp Lejeune. So you do get to see different peoples and different cultures, and it broadens your worldview. But again, who you are when you go in, you bring those things with you, and so it's no different than any other institution in society. But I do think that there are Black veterans who have become like anti-war, because I think if you've actually lived through a war, you take a different stance than people who may think that it's some sort of video game. And that those who have experienced it are less likely to actually want to go into war, because this is not like some John Wayne stuff or some Rambo stuff that you see on in movies, with the one guy taking out an entire country with an M60, right, machine gun. That's just not going to happen. War is not pretty. It's not fun. There are heroic actions, but there's nothing necessarily heroic about it. If that makes sense. So I'll stop there.
Okay. Well, you raise a question that we started off by talking about the Pentagon.
Yeah.
Maybe Eric can weigh in on this as well. I wonder whether there is the troops are influenced by the actions outside in the Pentagon, such as the actions of Hegseth here denying those people the promotions, renaming of military bases back to Confederate names, all of that. You think that has an effect on the troops, or what? Anybody can answer, actually.
Well, I think, listen, when I was in the military, we talked about all the things that we saw that were, not right, that were issues of racism that we saw either going up through the chain of command. So the troops themselves are not immune to that. Those folks see the same things that those of us outside of it see. I mean, of course, you have to follow your chain of command, and you are not allowed to express it in the same way that a person, in civilian world would. But that doesn't mean that those folks don't see those things. They don't see the folks being passed over for promotions, or because you see it even at the lower ranks. You see, person who should be a corporal or a sergeant or a staff sergeant that is not. And so you see those things at every level, just like any other institution in society. So
what can you do about it, though?
Well, there's not to be perfectly honest, there's not a whole lot you can do about it in the military and being on active duty. Because again, I remember when I first went to Paris Island, one of the first things that the drill instructor said that we're here to protect democracy, not to practice it.
I see. Okay. Yeah. All right. Anybody else want to chime in?
Well, I can just annotate what Ron just said. I mean, but the same thing can be said in whatever armed force there is in the world, or even a non-traditional fighting force.
Right.
Richard?
Yes. Who's talking? Who's speaking?
Over here, Clarence.
Oh, Clarence, yeah.
Yeah. I just got to chime in a little bit here, because as I mentioned earlier, I was drafted in late '69 and served until late '71, very late in the Vietnam period there. But on the question of the politics question, morale question, inside the service, I got to see both sides of it, because when I arrived, the Pentagon was dealing with a big problem in the ranks, because of the fact that black soldiers were dying at a higher rate than white soldiers were. And there was a real controversy, some of us remember, back, and I'm talking about like 65, through like 68, 69, there were actual riots and protests inside the service at some bases, some more remote than others. And it was a serious problem. It wasn't all covered, of course, because it was inside the military, but there were stories here and there. But the most dramatic thing I think that happened was when I was at Fort Lewis, which was then Fort Lewis, now it's Lewis McChord Joint Service, a joint service base out near Seattle. Jane Fonda and her group of protest performers appeared in a benefit concert there. This was a time when a lot of guys inside the service were protesting in whatever way they could. There were underground newspapers that I well remember. You could see them in museums now, I guess. But there was...
Wait, the people in the military put out underground newspapers?
Yes, they did. And I'm trying to think of where... there used to be a peace museum where you could go and see these things. I think that the Smithsonian has some of them on display inside the Blacksonian, as we call it, the African American Museum. I'm sorry, I didn't come prepared to talk about this, but the fact is there was a tremendous a protest movement quietly inside the service. And about 68, 69, there was a move to improve morale. And a big report came out that said, they needed to do something about promotions. And they didn't say diversity in the ranks. They said that later on. But nevertheless, there was a concerted effort to try. Well, I was working at there at Fort Lewis. There was a concern about the fact that there were no black broadcasters in the Armed Forces radio and television. There was a concern about the lack of diversity in the upper ranks. And this was something that became a major issue at that time, but things began to change rather quickly. And there are a bunch of reports which you can find without doing a whole lot of heavy research about what this service did in order to improve diversity in the ranks at that time. Things got much better. And you began to see, well, Colin Powell himself was turned down when he was up for promotion to general. And at that time, they said, this guy's so well qualified and all. They went through the process again to see if they could get more diversity among their generals. And he was promoted in that round of evaluation. And that sort of thing went on in a way that really improved diversity tremendously. This all came to mind recently because Hegseth, as you mentioned earlier, seems to have done all he can to reduce the number of officers of color around him. And so you've had a decrease for the first time. And you've got he and Trump have been pretty outspoken about this. And so it's we will see what happens eventually, but at least for the time being, though, we're seeing a retreat of diversity in the ranks, and in a way that I have not seen since the 70s, frankly. So it's something that, well, I don't know how much longer Hegseth is going to be in that job. His replacement is rumored all the time. But, maybe Eric,
I have a question for you journalists.
Can I just make a follow on Clarence's point about a decrease in diversity in the ranks? I think what we're seeing is a decrease in the diversity amongst the upper ranks of the military.
Yeah.
I think in the the lower ranks, the privates, the corporals, the sergeants, we have to remember that, black folks join the military for lots of reasons, including patriotism, but also because it's a good job. One of the things that struck me, this is going back a few years back when I was working on a series with the New York Times on race relations, and I was assigned to do something on the military. And I spent some time at Fort Jackson in Columbia, South Carolina, which is a big basic training base. It's the Army's biggest basic training base. And I was being taken around by this young white female sergeant. And one of the things I noticed, and I said to her, is that all the female sergeants I see in the Army on this base are black. She's the only white sergeant that I've seen, female sergeant that I've seen. And why is that? And she says, because white women join the lower ranks of the military for adventure. And after their first 3 years of tour, they leave because they feel there's more opportunity for them outside. Black women doing it because they think of it as a career opportunity. And so they stay and they become sergeants. White women don't become sergeants because they're not in long enough. So I think we always have to remember when we talk about black folks joining the military that they do for lots of reasons, including the career opportunities, especially the opportunities at the lower ranks. When you talk about the upper ranks of the military, it's a different thing. But the lower ranks, it's it's sort of like what they used to say about the post office. You could always get a job
Right,
at the post
right,
office.
right.
Yeah.
Well, since you mentioned, go ahead, Ron.
Well, to Steve's point, in the upper ranks, when you're talking, colonels and above, because those people are going to be promoted to generals. That gets very political, right? Because you're jockeying for positions, and it's not a sort of the straightforward. There's so many slots that are open for those positions. So that is those are very political roles. I mean, and folks have to be honest about that. But I did want to make a larger point about, you talk about how the military is, and the one thing that, that's always been said about the military is that it is an equal opportunity employee. Because once you are in, take Marine Corps boot camp, boot camp is boot camp. It didn't matter who you are, it's boot camp. Everybody goes to the same boot camp. There's no special nothing for anybody. So when you hear folks saying, well, we're going to make this tougher, or we're going to make sure everybody's living, the standard is the standard. You go through, I can't speak for other services, but for the Marine Corps, you go through those 16 grueling weeks in hot ass Paris Island with the sand fleas and all of those that there's no other way to do it. So, to hear people talk about, raising standards, or the standards are the standards. If you get through Marine Corps boot camp, you pretty much get through anything. I believe, because that is some grueling stuff, some of the toughest stuff that I've ever done in my life. But that what you hear now is this talk about raising standards, or that other people, nobody is gonna get there. There is none of that in the Marine Corps or any other services. I mean, you get what you get, and African Americans and Asian Americans, Latinos, everybody who has gone through there has, you're there because you do the job, and there is no exception for you. And those people are deserving of any rank that they get, because you can't be a slacker and get to be a general. I mean, you just can't. You cannot be a slacker and rise that high in the ranks, or an upper class NCO, like a master sergeant. You can't be a slacker and be in those roles. So it's somewhat offensive when to hear some of the conversations around why these changes are being made in the military.
As a As a veteran, would you encourage young people to enlist in any branch?
Yes and no. I mean, I think that if it's something that so when people ask me, I tell them about my experience and why I joined, and to Stephen's point, look, I joined, and just as an aside, I actually did not intend to join the Marine Corps. I went to the recruiting station late, and the only guy there was a Marine Corps recruiter.
I've heard that story before.
He got me.
Would you encourage them to become officers?
He got me. I would encourage folks to, if I think that if you want a challenge, right, and if you want a career that does not, entail, like some people just don't want to go to college right away, or don't want to go at all, but they still want to have like a pretty good job and be able to get a home and stuff. I think that it can be a fulfilling career. I would say it's not for everybody, though. I think that if people think that they're going to go in and just coast and then just, stay there and make money, that's not how it works. Now, have my children gone into the military? No. I haven't discouraged them, but I haven't encouraged them either, right? But I would, again, I wouldn't necessarily just come out and just say to people, "Hey, you should join the military." But if asked, I would tell them the pros and cons of doing this, because, especially as grown people, like, you're not used to people just telling you what to do and you got to do it, right? That's not, or people yelling in your face. That's not a it takes a level of discipline to be able to deal with that. So it's not for everybody.
Yeah, well, I can piggyback on that one. My daughter graduated from Florida State in 2008 with a degree in mechanical engineering.
Oh, Roger, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm sorry. I'm Roger Witherspoon, journalist. And I was battling with the Klan in the 60s, and so I did not go to Vietnam. My daughter graduated with a degree in mechanical engineering in 2008. A year later, she called me up and said she got a promotion. She was going to be a project engineer, which is the one who's in charge of all the different disciplines when you're building a building. Since I'm not new to this planet, I know that you can't get a PE license until you've been a professional for at least 10 years. So I asked her, where the hell was this job that she was going to be a PE? And she said, oh, Afghanistan. And, there are 5 civilian support groups in a war zone for every single bra in the Marine. And she was there a week and called me, and there was all this noise in the background, and she did not sound right. As a parent, when your kid doesn't sound right. And I said, what's the matter? And she said, there was a mortar lodged at the barracks, and it fell short and blew the wall in and blew me out of bed. Okay. And what happened then? She said, I had to run to the bunker. Where was that? About 100 yards. Were they shooting at you while you ran? Yes. Okay. So that explains the bombs that seem to be going off in the background. She said, yes, those are mortars and hand grenades. Oh, okay. And remember, Corps of Engineers folks have no military training and are not armed. So she's just in with these folks. So I said, well, what do you need from me? And she said, can you sing to me? Well, I was a single parent. I used to sing my daughters to sleep. Okay. So for the next half hour, while there were guys yelling, "Motherfucker!" and you're hearing guns going, you're hearing bombs go off, I'm singing lullabies into her ear until she finally says, "Okay, it's done. Bye." Click, and I go, "What the fuck? Where are you?"
Okay.
Don't just go.
Kids.
A week
As a
before
grandparent and an uncle, I want to know whether I should encourage my grandsons and nephews and nieces to go into the military.
Well, the follow-up to that is after a year of doing that and building things in that war zone, she got an offer from NATO to be in charge of all military construction for Spain, Greece, Italy, and Latvia. So she took that. Nobody shoots at you in Luxembourg.
Okay.
How about that?
Nick,
Okay, I want to
Nixon,
call on.
I have a question. Nixon, what's your feeling with respect to the draft?
My feeling with respect to the draft, I don't, I guess that if it would make people who are, pro-war have some skin in the game if their relatives or someone that they know would be subject to being called up. Very few, a very small percentage of the American population that has actually served in the military too. The sister, and I forgot her name, was talking about, in the Marine Corps before that. So there's really little knowledge about it because so few people have actually served. So, I think that was an equalizer in some way for the previous generations of people who served in the military, because it wasn't like a choice. Like, I joined voluntarily. Like, I went to a recruiting station, I joined voluntarily. But that a lot of folks in society have been not really impacted about what happens in the military because they didn't have anyone that they knew or family members who actually served in the military or was put in harm's way. So, it's not necessarily my feeling. But I think the reality is that it puts everybody on equal footing, that you're subject to being called up. Now, again, even before, people found a way to get out of the draft. So I'm not going to sit here and act like there's no way around it. But I do think that it would give some folks pause in really pushing for, things that they themselves or their families would not be impacted by.
Well, the point is, who's going to fight these wars? I have a son-in-law now who is deployed. He's over there. He's headed to the area. And so I'm thinking about it in a different way when I talk about the military, when I talk about the war. I just want to point out that Asian Americans, specifically Filipinos, have always seen the military as a kind of affirmative action. In World War II, they got the GI Bill. They were able to buy a house. They were able to have a job. That was the way it was looked at, back then. And you also have this weird sense of equality in the military, not exactly the kind of equality that one would automatically embrace, but this mixture of socialism and authoritarianism, more like the Chinese, Republic of China. It's that kind of thing. If that's for you, I have relatives who they love where they are, but they're looking forward to that early retirement. Except, here they are a few years away from retirement, and they are deployed. They have been deployed, and so now we pray. A couple of points about some things I said earlier. 200,000 Filipinos were affected by the Rescission Act of 1946. And as they died, ultimately, the ones who survived got their benefits in 2009 when Obama got the omnibus bill and snuck in the provision to pay the first step of payments for Filipinos who fought in the Philippines and the Filipinos here who were subsequently came to America and became citizens. And then one other point, we should mention the diverse army. What is a diverse army when they talk about the diverse army? Because when Pete Hegseth talks, does he mean an all-white army? Does he mean he doesn't want to see black people and Asian people who are in the upper ranks as generals, like General Taguba, or my relative through marriage, Ed Soriano in the army? He's a lieutenant general. Because we should also mention My Lai right now, right, and Lieutenant Calley. And Lieutenant Calley, was white from Florida, but his commanding officer was Captain Ernest Medina, a Mexican American, and he was let go, but he never quite was the same after the kind of scrutiny he deserved. There's a kind of person who goes in the military, and that's the kind of person that Hegseth wants, regardless of color. This is where people who talk about diversity and say, "Oh, we want diversity of opinion. We want diversity of viewpoint." They're not the color of your skin. I guess maybe that's what we're talking about here, because you just point to Captain Ernest Medina, Mexican American from New Mexico, who was the commanding officer of Lieutenant William Calley and My Lai, and you've got that army. The army is capable of having that kind of army.
Right. But Emil, so to your point, though, when you go, as I said before, when you go in, you are who you are, right? Like you bring your whole self to the military because, again, you're not on duty all the time. So, black folks go over here, white folks go over here. Sometimes there's intermingling with people, but at the same time, like you're not gonna have people who are not gonna be who they are. There's no way to get around just purging folks unless you just draft everybody from Poseyville, Indiana, and then you'll have military that you want. But if you're drafting brothers from Brooklyn and folks from Birmingham, Alabama, and Memphis, Tennessee, you're gonna have folks who are gonna be themselves because once we're off duty, we're just who we are.
Well, I get that. I think that when we talk about diversity in the military, we ought to talk about how or what it means when people stand up to authority and when people challenge and when people don't challenge and they just listen to orders. And maybe in a more diverse military, you might get that diversity of opinion and of color to get a better fighting force because you have people who do provide a kind of pushback, a better fighting force. That's what we can hope for.
Okay. John Watson.
Hi. I was listening to the arguments about diversity in the military.
Wait. First, identify yourself too, John.
My name is John Watson. I'm a professor of journalism at American University in Washington, D.C. So I was listening to those arguments about diversity in the military, and it became apparent to me that what Hegseth is doing is contradictory to what the United States Supreme Court said in 2023 when it ruled against race-based admissions to colleges.
Right.
They made a special exception for the military schools. And that was based on national security. And it echoed what the men and women here have said. The military has to be made up of the broad spectrum of Americans. If you don't make sure a significant number of Black and brown people go to West Point, Annapolis, and the Air Force Academy, you're going to have a completely white officer corps, and that undermines national security. The amicus briefs filed with the Supreme Court pointed that out. They said you can't treat the military schools the way you treat Harvard and UNC. We know from history, we need Black officers to lead the Black and brown soldiers who make a significant portion of the actual fighting forces. So at some point, someone's going to have to let Hegseth know you need to judge some of these people by the color of their skin and their national heritage because we need them to keep the country safe. I just wanted to add that, although I didn't want to
And that's
go too
precisely what
deeply into the law.
Hegseth does not want. He has spoken out boldly against diversity hiring and promotions programs aimed at increasing diversity. I've written about this. Books have been written about this over the years. This is not new to the military. The Supreme Court decision you mentioned is a very important one, and indeed that is what the court had ruled. They saw diversity as being a national security matter, and Hegseth thinks it's just woke politics.
Yes.
Wokeness is taking over. Blah blah blah. Woke.
Yeah.
And this is just the kind of naivete that leads you to a kind of security risks that you don't need to have. And it also robs you of the kind of diversity of talent that would turn out to serve in the military. And you also have the question that came up before about do people feel more comfortable with diversity or less while they're coming into the military? It goes both ways. I mean, what was the guy's name? The guy who Timothy McVeigh. He was radicalized in the military before he blew up the Oklahoma City building out there. You can go on. And again, there's a lot of literature, a lot of books, a lot of government reports and university reports on this radicalization in the military. And on the flip side, the happy story, which is people who for the first time are living and working and training and fighting with people who they weren't living with before, coming from segregated neighborhoods or from rural or urban districts, whatever. Everybody's got a heartwarming story to tell about some military buddy that they made who came from a different race, different background than them. The classic Hollywood picture of the barracks full of a guy from Brooklyn, that fellow from Oklahoma, a guy from, and I mean, on and on. This still goes on. Now, I think on the whole, this story about diversity in the military is a good one, a favorable one, a hopeful one. But every so often, you got people come along and say, no, we don't want to have all this woke politics getting in here. This is one of the controversies with Stars and Stripes that, to get back to our original topic, Hegseth doesn't want woke journalism. And I mean, I can go on and on. I do get a little exercised about this. Please forgive me. I try to be a balanced and objective, dispassionate journalist here, but sometimes sometimes these policies, naive politicians, etc., get on my last nerves.
I heard that too.
Okay.
Okay, Latrice had her hand up also.
No, I just want to throw out there that Hegseth, he may want an all-white military, but it doesn't work. When they tried to do this during World War I, they literally had to go in and change the law. They tried to have an all-white military, and the white people were like, absolutely not. You will not have all of us go out there and die. They literally were like, wait, where are the black people? They didn't care about any other group. They were like, we don't want an all-white military. We need black people in the military. I think that Hegseth may want an all-white military, but white people don't want an all-white military. And even they tried to do this during one of the most racist presidencies we've ever had, which was presidency of Woodrow Wilson.
That's
and
right.
Even then they were like, that's not gonna work. Hegseth is, you can tell that whatever mission he's on, it's self-driven. It's not going to work. I mean, also you have
he was trained at Fox News. What you going to do, right?
Well, I mean, you have all the hard work that a lot of these groups, like for example, the renaming of the bases. Those a lot of those committees have been working for years to rename those bases, and that was a very diverse group of people who helped to work on that, both black and white. And so I think that there is a lot of frustration and pushback. In terms of what's going on with Hegseth in the Defense Department.
I thought it was clever of them to try to find replacement names for these military forts, which were the same names as before, but they were white people this time, or they were people who were different. They weren't Confederate officers. So it's like that's the kind of game playing that goes on to try to avoid doing the right thing.
Let's let's not lose sight though who's Hegseth's boss, and let's not lose sight that maybe sooner than later that there'll be an election that will temper his boss's ardor, and in any case there'll be an election in 2028.
Okay, I see Steve Holmes has his hand up too.
Yeah, let's also not lose sight of one other fact. I agree with Professor Watson's on talking about the 2003 Supreme Court ruling that made put an exemption for the banning of affirmative action programs, exempted the military academy. But we've got a very different Supreme Court now. And I have the feeling if that case or that argument may resurface in the Supreme Court by this administration seeking to end diversity programs in the service academies, and I don't know how this court will rule.
Well, my understanding of that court decision, and I could be wrong because I'm not the Supreme Court expert by any stretch, is that the military had discretion over that. So yes, the military had the ability to have that diversity and did under Secretary of Defense Austin, but it is ultimately up to the military to determine whether they want to retain that and up to the commander-in-chief to determine whether they want to retain that diversity.
And where's Austin now? Just asking.
Yes. Let me just inject here. We mentioned Steve, I think, mentioned also about the women who joined the military and stayed for a while, and that then they felt they had better opportunities. And I wanted to just interject. It's in the chat from Tanya Gazdick, who is the president of JAWS, Journalists and Women Symposium. She had a conflict, unable to attend here, but she left this message. The Journalism and Women Symposium aims to empower women and promote diversity while advocating for inclusive and accurate news coverage. We are concerned when women in any profession face challenges that appear to be gender or race motivated. I'd like to give a shout out to the National Association of Black Military Women, which let's see, where's the rest of this? Which works to document her story, ensure representation, and provide mentorship to current service members. So anyway, I wanted to project the female perspective, another female perspective on the conversation. All right, who wanted to speak next?
Yeah,
Roland.
I just wanted to say that in our base in Okinawa, we had what is called the race discussion group, meaning that if one of our soldiers was facing any racial discrimination, the base commander at times got involved in those discussions in order to solve the problem. That was in Okinawa. So the military came up with a system in order to address those racial conflicts.
Okay, we have about 15 minutes left, and I just want to ask, put this on the table. Given what we all heard now, where do we go from here? We have the 250th anniversary commemorations coming up the next year, or whatever it is. How does all this fit into that? And as I say, with Hegseth doing what he's doing, and the feelings that are expressed here, what now? What's our next move? I want to respond to that. Okay, Leslie Harris has her hand up.
I'll speak as the historian. So it is this summer, and I think what we're going to
summer, yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. What we're going to see is a variety of things. So supposedly there's UFC on the White House lawn, which will be an enormous embarrassment, irrelevancy. But I want to reinforce, and this gathering is an example of that we're not going back. They're dragging us back. The people who do not want to go back vastly outnumber these people at the top. every the hardcore, which may remain a permanent hardcore, anti-diversity is really pro-MAGA, whatever you want to call it, is not a majority at all. MAGA itself is estimated at 35% in polling. As an historian who's done a lot of public history over the years, particularly around the issue of slavery, what I've seen from teachers, from museums, from people, just general walks of life, is that more people than we imagine have gone through a transformation in their thinking of what this country is. It's imperfect, but more people have an experience of diversity, desire an experience of diversity. And I think we're going to see some of that in terms of how this 250th anniversary is celebrated. That you're going to have local organizations that are not taking their notes from the Trump administration. I'm thinking too about the military, which did argue before the Supreme Court in favor of a diverse military. And that was very striking to me. I'll say historians date the integration of the military after World War II and see that as one of the rare success stories in which, even with all its problems, and I've really learned so much about what it was like and has been like on the ground, but that is an institution that has really pushed diversity just as strongly as higher education in other places. And I think it's harder than they imagine to uproot all of that. They can, I guess, fire everybody or fire, who they think are the troublemakers, but they will harm everything that they're doing. Finally, I also want to raise this question. I've been thinking a lot about, I think it's Roland who's been asking about being part of the military and yet being anti-war, and the question of, do we encourage our young people to join the military? My oldest nephew is Air Force, who has left the military because of this administration, has gone on to other. But, the military has been an opportunity for so many people, so many of you who are right here. And yet, whenever we go to war, there's this moment when the people who joined for opportunity are suddenly on the front lines. And I always find that kind of an odd contradiction. The job of the military is defense. And unfortunately, under this administration, it has become offense, but that's always a possibility. And I have struggled with that in terms of watching my nephews. One joined, one just didn't complete, but both went into the Air Force Academy. And it was an opportunity for a career, but he was in danger the whole time of being called up, and he did do some overseas service. So I don't know, as we as a country move towards a sort of nonviolent footing, coming out of the 60s, out of the success of the civil rights movement, I don't know how we balance that with military service. And so I just remain very curious. And that many of the people who go into the military are people who feel that it is their best opportunity because other opportunities are shrinking in our society. So is there a desire on the part of this administration in particular to continue to restrict opportunity broadly so that they force people into positions in the military and other places? And that seems to be something that happens in authoritarian regimes. So those are my thoughts. This has been an incredible conversation.
Leslie, the integration of the military seems to me to help ensure the integration of society. So, for example, we often hear people talk about, Trump controls the nuclear button. If he decided to press the button and wipe out South Side of Chicago, he could push that button. He could push that button all day long, Clarence. But what it does is it activates a console on the desk of the administrator of the National Nuclear Security Administration. And unbeknownst to Trump, she is black.
I'm glad to know that too.
And so, the integration of the military spread out through all different levels of responsibility and training, mirrors what the country is trying to become. But it also ensures for troublemakers like you, Clarence, we have some people watching our backs.
Okay.
Okay, John Watson has his hand up.
I want to go back to the 250th anniversary and look at what the image of the American military is now to the American people. American soldiers have been put on city street corners. The ICE agents are dressed as soldiers. The president wanted this huge military parade, just like Stalin would have ordered. I wonder if the general American affection and respect for the military has changed, and I would mean change in a negative way. Because generally, I thought the American people thought of American soldiers as the good guys. Has that changed now? Will 250 years permanently change how we see our men and women in uniform?
Eric, do you have any thoughts about that? Eric Slavin?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen any indication that it has changed at this point, but that is also sometimes a reflection of a lack of understanding from much of the public as to what people do in the military. I can recall a poll where something like 50% said that everyone in the military is a hero. I thought, well, I don't know too many people in the military that would say that. There are absolutely some people who do mind-blowingly heroic things, and there are lots of people who do their jobs honorably and respectfully. There are people who are just kind of trying to get by, and then there are people who get court-martialed. It's a pretty wide variety of people that you get. It's a microcosm, as some people here have said, of life. So, yeah, I don't know if that view changes among the public or not. I haven't seen it yet at this point.
Okay, I see Glenn Proctor has a comment in the chat room. Vietnam changed the perception of the military. What do you mean by that, Glenn? Glenn, are you there? Maybe he stepped away.
You need to unmute yourself.
Oh.
Yes, for those of us who served in Vietnam and came home to jeers instead of cheers, and throughout my journalism career, yes, I have seen the change, because back then it was legacy, it was family legacy, it was patriotism, but it was also because that was the only situation that, poor black, brown, and white boys had. And, but that whole perception, at least in my opinion, is not there anymore. Society has moved on, and being in the military, even where we are right now, in Iran, I mean, with the Iranian situation going on, to a lot of Americans, it's an afterthought. The only thing that they care about is their gas bill, and but the fact that so many men and women are in harm's way, not only there but around the world every day, is an afterthought to and for many Americans.
Richard, maybe we ought to be thinking about the way war is changing. Cheaper things like drones fighting these multi-million-dollar planes. We ought to be thinking about AI replacing the fighting force. We ought to be thinking about that sort of thing, which would get rid of any need for diversity, because we'd have robots, and then everyone who would be in the military would they'd go on their leisurely life and not be put out in war. I mean, there's that we need to think about when we talk about the future, but we also need to talk about, well, what about the people who really love war? I'm talking about those who want to privatize to the degree so that no one who doesn't want to serve has to serve, because we'll have a privatized force of people and the AI and the drones, and that's how we fight. The way we're thinking now is that maybe we're going to go back to the old way. It's a human army. May not be in the future.
Hey, Richard, if I could
Yes,
jump
go
in
ahead.
here. That's an interesting take on it, Emil, but that's a little bit in the future. We're coming up on the 250th anniversary of this country this year, right? And Richard asked, what are our next moves? And I think that what we have to look at is what this administration isn't just doing when it comes to diversity in the military, it's also trying to put forward its version of history. And it seems to be bent on erasing the contributions of Black and Brown people to with regard to this country's history and this country's military histories. You've seen that with things like changing the historical records for Arlington Cemetery to cut out the Black soldiers. They took down plaques for a military cemetery in the Netherlands that had the contributions of Black soldiers.
Yeah.
So I think that what we have to do in the very near term is to continue to remind people of the contributions of Black, Brown, and Native
Asian.
Americans and Asian people to this country's history. And that's something, as we approach this anniversary, that's something that we all can do, and that we all should dedicate ourselves to doing.
Well, Stephen, I just want to add that when I was first approached by Richard on this, I was just thinking, what do you mean, Asian Americans in the military? Didn't anyone study the 442nd in their history classes? Didn't anyone know about the 1st and 2nd regiments of the Filipinos when World War II? I mean, does anyone know about the U.S.-Philippine War? Does anyone? It's all about the suppression of history needs to end, and we need to rediscover history as news. Old news isn't old news. That's history. We need to recover that and present it as news because it is news to most everyone who didn't get it the first time around.
Well, all right. Anybody who hasn't said anything yet want to say something now before we close? Mark Rochester, or David Thompson, Rachel Jones?
I just end with this point. That you mentioned the movie Soul Patrol.
Yes.
It's not quite out yet, but I just mentioned he's too modest. But Jason, who was on earlier,
yes,
he won the Sundance Film Festival for Best Director of a Documentary. So it's more than just another flick,
All right, thank you. Okay. Well, thank you all very much for participating in this. I think we all learned something or heard something we hadn't heard before. I hope that's the case. We will, as we usually do, print out the chat room comments and then email them to everybody for whom we have email addresses. And we have recorded this, and hopefully it'll be posted on YouTube tomorrow, and which you can share with those who didn't get a chance to see this, and then we'll think about next month. And now I just had a conversation with Jeff Bennett of PBS, who has written a book about Black humor, Black comedy in the last few decades, and he's be with us next month. So I'm happy about that. And we want to have, if there are others who should be with him to compliment him, don't be shy about giving us names and contact information for those folks. We all need a good laugh. And yeah. Oh, yeah. So thank you all once again. And remember now, next month will be Memorial Day. And let's hope that some of this information can filter out into the wider public. Things that we've learned, perspectives that we've heard can be shared more widely. So thanks everybody. Have a good rest of the evening, and hope to see some of you next month.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Richard.
Been a great song.
Okay.
Good program. Good program.